Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Ken Moore, and this is Local Matters. And today I have with me Rachel Bradley of Shoebox Taxes. Taxes are up. It's not, it's past April 15th, but we're all still, most of us are still procrastinating, right, Rachel?
Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. We met in a Zoom call in Greeters in the McMinnville Chamber. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, this is an interesting person. You've been a radio a personality talking about taxes. You've been at this for years and years. So I thought, this is something I'm interested in, and maybe other people will want to watch us talk. Well, Rachel, introduce yourself a little bit. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What were you like in high school? And how did you get to love putting numbers in boxes?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is quite an honor. I am originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Illinois and have lived in the Oregon area, actually mostly in Hillsboro, for about 17 years, and just moved my business to McMinnville. Love it here. Got to say, McMinnville is a beautiful town. Absolutely love it here. What was I like in high school? Well, I was a nerd. Go figure. I also am a musician. I love music, but it doesn't pay the bills. So I've discovered fairly young that I like putting numbers in boxes. And it was either taxes or professional Sudoku solver. And there's not much call for Sudoku. So I enjoy doing taxes. I know that most of you are like, ew, but I love it. So it's great. A lot of people don't love it. So it's, I don't, people, some people are like, oh, I just love baking. I hate baking. So, great. I go to somewhere else to get my meals, and people come to me to do their taxes. It works out great.
Well, music and taxes, I see a connection there. There's all these little notes, and they all have numbers attached to them, and it's very complex, and
Oh, yeah.
they fit together and they add up to a composition. Maybe you even feel like you're turning in a composition when you plop that finished tax form
Oh, yeah.
down.
Math and music are very similar. A lot of
Uh,
people mention that.
Now, you started out on paper doing taxes. You've been at this for, like you said, I think 17 years.
Mhm.
Your experience. Well, I remember erasing, going back, and all these changes would flip back through the forms, and you'd have to erase and erase and erase.
One of these. Yeah.
And yeah, but boy, I love my TurboTax. I make a change, and it shows me
Yeah.
exactly what that difference was.
Yeah.
Um, Now, you went from, did you resist automation? And I know tax preparers have a higher form of tax preparation software that is not for beginners.
I love automation. In fact, before a lot of those programs came out, I was programming my own tax software in like Excel sheets.
Really?
Yeah, so just because, well, I'm sure the software was out there, but it was exorbitantly expensive and more
Hmm.
expensive than most, a big CPA firm would buy it. But when they were like $30,000 for the software, most small mom and pops would still use paper.
Wow.
Uh, and I went into Excel spreadsheets and created my own software. It wasn't
Yeah.
pretty, but and you couldn't e-file back then. So I would just, it would spit out the answers, and I'd write in the answers. But so when it came down in price so that it was affordable for everyone, I jumped on it.
Yeah. I use TurboTax, but I don't e-file. I feel like I'm going to make them read it. They're not going to give them the easy run software on my return so easily to see if they want to audit me. I'm going to make them, but maybe they just have scanners that read my numbers and they plug it into the same software anyway. I bet that's right, isn't it?
Actually, did you get your refund already?
Well, in what universe have I already filed?
Oh, right. Right now, because of the COVID, people who
Yes.
are paper filing are not getting their refunds because people aren't
Oh,
going in to read them. So people who are e-filing are getting their refunds a lot faster.
well,
Now,
that
that's
is,
always the case.
yeah.
E-filing, you can get your refund usually in 3 weeks, sometimes less. This year, it's
Uh-huh.
been crazy. Some people get them overnight. Some people it takes months. I have some clients, they've been waiting 2 months. It is just the craziest. And like I said, I've been doing this 17 years. I've never seen anything like this, where some people get it right away, and some people it's like, it's been 2 months, where's my refund? They're still processing it. And mostly it's because they've filed on paper for various reasons. Some people cannot e-file because of certain forms aren't e-fileable. And people just can't make it into the office yet to look, or they're just now getting into the office and the stack is, you know, this high. They're right there on the stack and they're just working their way up. So,
well, that's the worth of the price admission to this show right there. I mean, why to e-file?
Yeah, I highly recommend e-filing if you can. It's definitely worth it.
Okay, well, I've learned something right there. Thank you. So the tax, over the years, you've seen taxes change. Just off the top of your head, what's different now than in the last 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, the biggest change I've ever seen in my career was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. There it is, 2017, that President Trump oversaw. There were some good things in that and not so good things in that, but it was a huge change. A lot of people are aware of the, basically the standard deduction doubled. So where a married couple was about $12,000 standard deduction, now a married couple's $24,000. Single person $6,000, single person $12,000. So that's a huge thing, but they took away the exemptions. So a single person would get a $6,000 standard deduction and a $4,000 exemption. Then they just changed it to $12,000, which is actually better. But if you're a married couple with 4 kids, used to get $12,000 standard plus $4,000 per kid, that's a lot more than the $24,000 and nothing for the kids. To make it up, they doubled the child tax credit, but it doesn't quite make up. They also took away a lot of the standard, the itemized deductions. They put a limit on the state SALT, what they call state and local taxes, of $10,000, and that hurt a lot of people. They completely did away with a section called unreimbursed business expenses. So when your boss says, you know, hey, drive from point A to point B, and just, and, you know, the boss doesn't pay you back, you just put it on your taxes. That was a huge thing, and they don't do that anymore. Well, the reasoning behind that is the government shouldn't be reimbursing you for those expenses. Your boss should be reimbursing you for those expenses. So it kind of makes sense, but it's ended up hurting, especially in the trucking industry. People would take what's called per diems. The government allowed a certain X dollars per day, depending on where you were, lodging and incidental expenses per day. And people would get $12,000, $13,000 a year of per diems. And that was part of their salary, basically. And it was always assumed. So someone, you know, a trucker would get maybe $20,000, $30,000 a year plus those per diems. And when those went away, the trucking company didn't give them a raise. So they just got a huge pay cut, basically. Ouch. And a bunch of my clients just said, I can't do this, I quit. I don't blame them.
I wonder if that's what they call unintended consequences.
I'm not sure how unintended they were, but
ouch.
Yeah, ouch is right.
Well, maybe I'm a person that should have been paying more taxes. I don't know, but I definitely do now because of all those losses of deductions that you talked about. So yeah, the tax cut was not a tax cut for me. I hope it was for people in lower income brackets, and I don't think it was a tax increase for people in upper income brackets. Any comment about that?
You're right. It was a cut for people in the upper income, really, middle and upper income. It was a cut. The argument there is that these are the job creators. And if you're not paying so much in taxes, maybe you can open up a few more, hire a few more people. If you're a business, you can invest more in companies. I haven't seen that happen. I see more, they don't hire employees, they invest it in overseas investments, or they buy another piece of machinery. Maybe buying the machinery does push money into the economy. I'm not convinced it necessarily plays out that way.
No.
Um, yeah.
My political commentary is, yeah, I thought trickle down economics was disproven under Reagan. Why are we still doing that? But maybe people will write in to disagree with me. All right. So you've seen things change, and over all those 17 years, the biggest thing just happened 2-3 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Did that make it simpler? Was it simpler to do returns after that?
Actually, yes. A lot more people don't itemize anymore, although the state tax, the standard deduction for state taxes in Oregon is still about $2,000 for single and $4,000 for married. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need to keep receipts because I'm not itemizing anymore. You may still itemize, especially if you own a house. If you own a house, you can still take your mortgage interest and property tax. So do keep your donations and all that stuff. Do keep those receipts because you may still end up itemizing for state purposes.
Doing better to itemize.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, now, what's your advice going forward? But what should people be aware of this year? Has anything happened, or is it pretty quiet?
From 19 to 20, there aren't a lot of huge changes. Every year a few things little, bump up. The mileage rate bumps up. You can now put $6,000 per year into your IRA instead of 55. It's been 5,500 for 6 or 7 years now. It bumped up to 6,000. So woohoo! And I highly recommend put $6,000. Put the maximum you can into an IRA, especially if you're young. You might think, oh, I've got decades before I retire. This is the time to do it. Especially if you don't have kids, put that money into an IRA. If you put, $5,000 a year into an IRA now and then stop when you're 40, you'll have more money than if you start when you're 40 and try to do it for the rest of the time you're working. It's when you're young is the time to do that. So it's good that they keep bumping that up, bumping the maximum.
Boy, that's great advice. I hope people heard that. So now, should they do a Roth or a traditional? What do you have an opinion there?
There are changes, and the difference between Roth and traditional is a little more complicated. So I would say if you have questions about that, ask myself or another tax preparer or a banker. There are pluses and minuses on both sides. I personally have both. Just, spread out the wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sometimes when you get hit with a tax surprise, you owe a lot. It's a good idea that's when I think about, I'll put all this money into the IRA, and that'll be a deduction. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, it's a subtraction. You can subtract that from your adjusted gross income. Yep.
Yeah, those are big words. Exemption, deduction, subtraction, all different meanings.
Credits. Yep.
Thank you.
And they mean all kinds of things to people like me, and they probably don't mean anything to most people except, I pay fewer taxes. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, back to any changes that we should be aware of. Those of us that are getting ready, just about to start our taxes, because they're due in about a month.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing this year is because of the COVID. They pushed everything isn't due until July 15th. So you got an extra few months. You don't have to make your payment even until July 15th, but don't wait until July 14th. I highly recommend, if you haven't done your taxes yet, do them now. Don't wait until July 15th. Because there's still, if you owe taxes, they're not going to give you a penalty unless you owe more than 1,000. But it's just so hard. If you owe, you get farther and farther behind. Please get them in now. Whether you do it on TurboTax or go to someone like me, or just get that. Call us up, get an appointment. We fill up fast, and we're probably going to fill up even faster. I'm often booked for the entire month of April. I'm expecting to be booked the entire month of July now.
So beat the rush right now.
Beat the rush, really. It's that important. Another couple of things. If you didn't get your stimulus payment, that will come up next year. If for whatever reason it fell through the cracks, you will be able to get it on your taxes in your 2020 taxes in 2021. So that's to watch for. There are still ways to get it now. They're still trying to sort that out. The story is the IRS asked Congress, do you want it fast or do you want it right? And Congress said fast. So some people fell through the cracks. There's still people who haven't gotten it, and people who don't have income and therefore aren't in the system because they don't normally file taxes. There was a little hiccup about how to get those people in the system, and we're still working on it. Most people have gotten that, but if you haven't, there is a chance of getting that on that. A lot of people filed early because they wanted that $1,200 or $600. So that's another reason to file early.
Well, Rachel, you've been had spot on radio shows and for years. Tell us about what that was like. Were people calling in and asking questions, or did you do a presentation? And what were the kinds of things that people asked, and what were you wanting to make sure people knew?
That was mostly just me giving it. We didn't have any call-ins. That would have been great. I'd love that idea. I would 4 times a year, I would get on and tell people what they need to know for this period. And normally the summer was a time to talk about getting like people who have fallen behind. If you haven't filed for 2 or 3 years, a lot of people get nervous, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to jail. Oh no. And it was my job to say, you're not going to jail. The IRS is actually very good about, if you come clean, if you say, look, I want to make this right, you'll face some penalties, you'll face some fines, but they're much more interested in working with you. If you have to pay $25 a month for the rest of your life, they'll work with you on that. They're not going anywhere. They've been around for hundreds of years, for actually a little over 100 years. So they actually are very interested in working with people. So I highly recommend, if you're nervous, if you're biting your nails, oh my gosh, I didn't pay my taxes, get yourself into one of these. I would not recommend going to a lawyer. They charge too much. But most CPA firms and small tax firms like my own will be more than happy to. The first step is just filing, and you don't have to come up with all that cash at once. Just get those returns in and figure out how much you owe. And then the IRS will work with you on making a payment plan to get it paid.
Well, I think that nightmares about getting in trouble with the IRS and letters and phone calls and some auditor that you don't understand and that person doesn't understand you. They're up there with the nightmares about, oh, I missed my final. I can't get in my locker. I missed the term papers due. Those nightmares. Those are just right up there.
Oh yeah, I don't get the IRS nightmares because I work with them, but I do get the one where it's the night before the final and I haven't shown up for class at all.
Right.
And there's something in the back of my head, wait a minute, I have a master's degree. Why am I still in high school? So yeah. The other thing I want to say to listeners and viewers is, if you get a phone call from someone claiming to be the IRS, I guarantee it's not the IRS. They will almost never call you on the phone unless you're already working with someone, and they will identify themselves by badge number. If it's just, this is the IRS, we're calling, and they'll have an Indian accent often because for some reason they do that. And they tell you owe a lot of money, and you need to pay right now with a credit card or a gift card. That's a scam. Do not give them your credit card number. If you think that might be legit, if you do owe money to the IRS and think they might be calling, hang up, to get a badge number, and then call me or one of your, call a tax preparer and give them that badge number and have them contact them. 999 times out of 1,000, it's going to be a scam. I like to keep them on the phone and talk to them and say, oh, hey, how you doing? Yes, I know I owe that. How? Okay, so you need a credit card number? Okay, 1. No, that's my credit card number, 1. And just play with them, keep them on the line, because the longer they talk to me, the fewer other people they can talk to and cheat. So if I have time, if I'm not busy, I'll keep them on the line, and but it breaks my heart that they do take advantage of people, because there are people out there who owe money to the IRS, and Obviously,
Mm.
it works because they're still calling.
Yeah,
So
that
just,
debt and that fear combine to be played upon.
yeah. So
Yeah,
don't give
interesting.
them your credit card number. It's a scam. Don't do it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, shoebox taxes. That
Yes.
just tells me, yeah, I keep my receipts in a shoebox, and now what do I do with it? I take
Bring
them
it
to
in.
Rich.
Bring it in. I have two clients who bring in literal shoe boxes. I
Oh,
had
that's wonderful.
Adidas and Nike this year. Nine West was last year's big thing.
Now you're in McMinnville now. What does
Mhm.
that mean? How do you have a brick and mortar, or is this mostly you do phone calls and you do Zoom calls now? What's your business model?
Both. I do have brick and mortar in McMinnville. I'm located, can I give my address?
Yeah, what street are you on?
Okay. 1133 Southwest Baker, Suite B. We're right next to the Great Harvest Bread Company, if you know where
Sure,
that is. Yeah, we're
sure.
right next to them. So if you want to come in, we are wiping down between, make sure and call first and get an appointment.
Okay.
Um, but we're wiping down between customers to make sure we're COVID free.
Yeah.
Because of that, I'm also cognizant, you can stop by and drop off your stuff, or you can call up. We'll get some information, and we have a secure website that you can download all your documents, some basic information, and then we'll do your taxes remotely. We'll send you an e-file or an e-signature, get your e-signature, and then everything is done completely remotely. No human hand ever has to touch it.
Hmm.
So we're able to do both.
What do you think is one of the most misunderstood pieces? Where do you see the mistakes most common? Is it just math errors that people do, or is it concept of how to carry something? Schedule D always how to add that up and get it back on the front page. That's always been a, how does that work? I'm glad
Yeah,
the software does it for me.
yeah, the Schedule D is not usually a big problem if you have software or a
Yeah.
professional doing it. What I see the biggest problem is who can you claim, especially if you have parents who are no longer married, and which parent claims the child.
Oh
There
yeah.
are actually some very complex rules. Um, for example, let's say mom and dad are split. Mom has custody, but dad has the right to claim the child. The dad claims the child for some credits, but there are credits that follow the custody only. So dad gets, for example, the child tax credit, but mom gets earned income credit. Mom gets to claim head of household status. Mom gets the Child Care and Dependent Care Act. It's very complicated and hard to keep track of. Um, and people who do it on their own, or even with TurboTax, um, TurboTax has a pretty good what is that called, interview mode, where it says, okay, who's this and who's that, but a lot of people, one of the things TurboTax does is it lets you change answers, and you're like, oh, let's see, I'm only getting 3,000 back. What happens if I change my answer to this? Oh, look, I'm getting $5,000 back. I like that better.
Nailed, you got me.
Yeah. So if you go to an actual human who can explain those rules and what they mean,
Uh-huh.
TurboTax may or may not do that. I mean, they do have a phone line you can call and talk to someone. How many people do that?
Yeah, right. No, that's a step.
That's the biggest thing, is people saying, well, I have custody, so I get to claim all those credits. Well, no. Did you give your ex-husband the right to claim him? Yeah, but he doesn't have custody. Well, and then it's the whole, and I teach a tax class, and I spend probably 4 or 5 class hours teaching this and going over and over. It is complicated, and it's one of the first things.
What if there's joint custody
Hmm.
and they just want to pass the deductions back and forth every year, for
Yep.
example? Can they just do that? If it's joint custody, one person can take it all one year and the other person can take it all the next year.
For the dependency credit, yes. The problem is there are some credits that are based on on who had custody, who had the most overnights. And the couple will say, well, it was exactly half. Now the wording of the law is more than half. So, well, there's 365 days in a year. So someone had to have more than half. No, it's exactly half. Well, then neither of you get it. If you're going to insist it's exactly half, neither of you get it because it says more than half. And they're like, well, that isn't fair. All right, you tell me which one I'm supposed to give it to then. So
wow, these are the
yeah,
fine tax points. That's
yeah,
why you're the radio talk show host. So where were
yes.
you when you did the radio show?
That was in Hillsborough. The
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to remember KQIC,
Uh-huh.
KQIK.
Okay.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I hope
Yeah.
we can do something like that here too.
Well, you do taxes for individuals. Do you do corporations? What are you a
Yep.
specialist in something? Uh, should you go to a specialist for something, or you can handle anything?
I wouldn't say I can handle anything. I do corporate taxes, nonprofit information returns, trusts and estates. I also do bookkeeping, payroll. I'm expanding that part of my business. If you're a corporation and you need an audit, that's when you're going to want to go to someone who's a CPA, a certified public accountant. That's something I am not a CPA, so that's something you wouldn't want to go to me for. But I can definitely help you prepare for an audit if you've already contacted the CPA and they've given you a list and you're like, I can't do all this. You can call me. I can help you prepare for it.
I was in a business. I had an employee for a while, and um, preparing the paychecks and the deductions, it never ends. You've always got, you never feel it. You're never done.
Yep.
And I think most businesses have somebody do that for them, don't they? It's because it's like having a whole nother business.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's actually part of my model is I tell people you went into business because you love baking pies or making widgets, whatever you do. You didn't go into business to fill out forms. That's my
mhm.
job. I love numbers. I love bookkeeping. I love that. So give that to me. You. I'll do your paperwork.
Yeah.
I do the numbers so you don't have to.
Where did you say you have a master's degree? Tell us about where you went to school.
University of Illinois.
Uh-huh. And what was that
That's
like?
that's in music. Yeah, that's in music though. So
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
help my career much, but I do have a degree in or certification in tax prep as well,
And
licensed
what
by the state of Oregon.
wonderful. What's your instrument or your medium, your musical
Vocal
medium?
performance and conducting.
Wow. And are you able to do that now? Do you have a church choir that doesn't meet anymore?
So yeah, that's the thing is we're all on
Oh,
hiatus. It's very sad. I
yeah.
sing with the Portland Symphonic Choir
Wow.
when I can, and private stuff here and there.
That's
So
fantastic. Wow. Well, Rachel, it's been really fun getting to know you. Now, have we left out, did we sign our form? Have we got all the boxes checked? Is there anything you want to leave us with your years of experience
oh
and
gosh.
what's happening now?
Just, I guess the other thing I could mention is if you're a business and you got one of those PPP payroll protection plans,
Yes.
there's a lot going on with that too, and that's definitely something you'll want to talk to a specialist, either a tax preparer or a specialist in that. They just changed you can stick with it. Used to be 8 weeks, and they changed it to 6 months, 24 weeks actually. Definitely check in with an account type person and make sure you're doing that right so you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, a lot of people got that. So that's
Yes,
probably the best.
I
That's
did.
probably excellent advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you again for being here. It's been such valuable information and for
Thank you.
volunteering. And I just think you really contributed to local matters. Thank you
Excellent.
so
Thank you
much.
for having me. Thank you.
Bye bye.